Hello, my name is Jennifer Engel. I am going to be reading chapter 4 of La Linea. A few things before we begin. Number one, hablo un poquito de español. So I'm not going to be reading the Spanish parts of the book, so please forgive me for that. But number two, if you join me for chapters 1 through 3, I did a lot of annotating. What I learned, because this is the first time I'm actually reading and teaching the book myself, is that students like to go at different paces when it comes to the book. And rather than grabbing one of my students by the collar and pulling them back, you would never do that if students were racing, right? We all race, we all walk at our different paces. I decided to change up how I'm checking for comprehension. So what I did was I created this little simple Google worksheet for my students where I have them have the same response prompt for every single chapter, and then that way I can check their understanding. Also, it kind of allows my students to be able to choose their own grade. If they simply just copy the prompt, they at least get a 2. If they add the who, what, why, so, or the because, they get a 3. If they say this shows or proves, they get a 4. And if they say why that's important, they get a 5. Now, as a teacher, obviously I'm going to go in, I'm going to read their samples um, to ensure that they are actually comprehending. And during guided reading, I feel that this is a time, as long as you're truly participating and it's somewhat related to the chapter, I believe in giving them full points for the guided reading. But I might give them a 2, 3, or whatever for their standard grade. If they needed some assistance, I give them a 2 for their standard grade. And if they were able to do it on their own, I give them a 3 for a standard grade. And if they were really able to go deep with all these questions and be accurate, then I give them a 4, which is an exceeds. So I just kind of wanted to explain that before we begin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the whole chapter once for fluency, and then I'm also giving my students examples from the first 3 chapters of what a good response would look like. All right, so I have La Linea open here, and here is chapter 4. And also with my students, what I'm doing is before I begin here as well, I'm giving them kind of like a focus, okay? So for chapter 4, there's not more than one. It's Elena's wish, more observations of the town. And the prompt is the same for every question. So for example, all I would have my students do is they could go back up to the top, they could copy the prompt, and they could paste it down here. Okay, they probably don't need the title here, so we're going to delete that. It just says this chapter contributes to the plot of the story because this shows, this proves, this reveals, and why it's important. All right, let's begin. Elena was like a weather vane on top of Senor Mendoza's house. She picked up on every change in the wind, no matter how slight. The day after my birthday, she seemed more alert than ever. She followed me everywhere I went, a silent little shadow. I ignored her. I didn't talk to her or look her in the eye. I tried to hide it, but she sensed my excitement about Papa's note. I had to tell Elena about my trip across La Linea. I couldn't put it off any longer. The sooner she knew the truth, the sooner she could get used to the idea. Late Friday afternoon, I dug out my last few pesos. I'd take Elena to San Juanito to buy her mango ice cream, her favorite, and tell her in public. Maybe she'd behave if we were around other people. Let's go to town, Elena, I said. We'll get some ice cream and hang out. She squinted her eyes and frowned slightly. I had never asked her to have fun with me. She didn't trust my invitation. Okay. She was too glad to refuse my offer. On the edge of San Juanito, Elena stopped. She pulled her special pink t-shirt, the one Mama sent from California, so her belly button showed for the whole world to see. You look trashy. Cover up. I reached over with both hands and jerked the t-shirt back down. So again, I'm not going to read this part. Elena backed up and tugged at her jeans. They moved lower on her hips. She hooked her thumbs into her belt loops and stuck her chin out defiantly. Who are you to judge? I looked her up and down. My sister was pretty. She didn't need to show skin for boys to notice her. I could scold her about dishonoring the family. But I wasn't her parent, and she knew it. She wasn't about to let me tell her how she could dress. Elena reached deep into the pocket of her jeans and pulled out an envelope. She chewed each fingernail off, weighed down, a sure sign that she was worried about something. Her slender fingers fumbled with the letter. Abuelita got this the other day, she confessed. It's from Mama. I'm sorry I didn't show it to you before. Don't be mad at me. I grabbed the paper roughly, jerking it out of Elena's grasp. It was Mama's usual letter, full of news. There was even a new photo of the twin sisters we had never seen. 3-year-old Maria and Liliana. They sat almost as if they were one, hands clasped, their lips turned up in identical grins, deep dimples on their cheeks, their nose crinkled up the same way their faces were framed by curly black hair. I held the picture by one corner and stared. How was it possible to have sisters that I have never seen? Did you read the last paragraph, Miguel? Elena asked nervously. Do you think Mama means it? Do you think we'll go soon? I read it aloud, Elena mouthing each word with me. We've all been working hard, overtime. We almost have enough money for you, Elena. It won't be long. Please, take good care of Abuelita. You are all she has now. Elena was ignoring the truth of Mama's words. I gave her an exasperated look. She knew the way it worked. She knew Papa's plan. Papa went first. Mama followed. I was next. Elena would be last. Papa sent for us one by one, waiting until he had money in hand. Come on, Elena. I steered her toward the plaza. Elena got mango and I got chocolate, and we sat side by side on one of the splintered benches at the east of La Plaza. Two senoras, the ancient Domingas, sat on the far side, string bags at their feet. They folded their arms and gossiped in small voices, their chins on their chest. Don Romero sat dozing in a chair. The two men played a slow game of checkers under the tree. 3 little boys kicked a soccer ball into and out of the empty waiting pool at the edge of the plaza. The blue concrete was cracked and stained with rust from the drain. This place is dead, Elena said, licking her cone. She gestured at me, then La Plaza, and then beyond, to include the whole town. Thanks a lot, I said. You know what I mean. She looked at her deserted town. There should have been lots of people out that time of day. She was right. San Benito had been emptied of young men. A few left because they wanted to. Most left because they had to. There was no work, nothing worth doing, just odd jobs here and there and a few pesos. Not enough to feed a family. Who'd want to stay anymore? Elena continued. Even if the girls are leaving now if they can. Just last month, Jesuita left with that new boyfriend of hers. She's 16, Elena. I made 16 sound like 60. Old. Really old. You're barely 15, Miguel. You're hardly even older than me, Elena said angrily. It was the biggest insult she could think of. It was also how she saw the world. In her mind, the 18 months that separated us was nothing. If I was old enough to do something, then she was too. She stood up, threw the last third of her ice cream cone on the dried up grass beneath my feet. That was Elena's way of telling me she knew I'd be going. It was her way of telling me what a chicken I was for keeping it a secret. It's not fair, Miguel. It's just not fair. Elena turned and started running out of town. She went right down the center of the road. There wasn't any cars to worry about or boys to impress. So she ran fast, kicking up the red dirt. It mixed with the sweat running down her face, ruining her pretty pink shirt. All right, so here we go. Elena's wish, or maybe what I should call it is her discovery. I mean, it's also her wish as well. Okay. So we're going to start with this chapter continues with the plot of the story because now when you think about the who, you always want to think about the main character. Okay. So it's always going to be Miguel in this case. Okay. And when you think about the what, you want to think about an action, what he did, and then also how that's related to the conflict. So, because Miguel, what did he do? He took his sister out for ice cream. Oopsie doopsie. And then, let's see. This chapter continues the plot of the story because Miguel and what you can also do if you want to make it look nicer. I'll keep it in there. I'll keep the numbers in there because that'll let us know how we're getting our points. Because Miguel took his sister out for ice cream. Okay, why? So that he could tell her he was leaving in public. That part's pretty actually, you know what? Let's start with that because this shows or this reveals, like this proves, okay? That could be our level 4 here. Well, no, we'll go with our so. She hopefully wouldn't have a tantrum. Okay. All right. So this proves, this shows, this reveals. I think what it revealed is a couple different things. Okay. This reveals that Elena knew. I mean, that was basically what it said right there in the text, that Elena knew Miguel was going to leave next. Okay. I'm going to say which is important because she wanted to leave because she knew the town, I'll say, was falling apart. You know, even the girls were leaving. And if you want to take it a step further, I can infer that she doesn't want to be left behind. Okay? So that's kind of what you can infer there. All right. Hopefully this has helped someone today. And join me when I read chapter 5.